Hey guys, welcome to this week's Digging Deeper video. We're glad you're here. Pastor Kyle with Pastor Nigel here. Thanks for paying attention. I kind of want to say smash that like button and subscribe because that's what I see all these YouTube guys do, but please don't do that. If you want to gently tap the subscribe button, that'd be fine. But yeah, so thanks for joining us this week. Pastor Nigel was preaching and it was kind of an in-between week of a series that we did and a series we're going into on the Sermon on the Mount, but it was a very intentional bridge, and some of the things that we talked about tie right into. If we have time, we'll get to that at the end. But so Nigel, give us well, and let me say this too before we start. So when we were planning on the sermon series and moving forward, and we're like putting things on the date on the calendar, I said, Nigel, we got this kind of week in between, and you can really use it to preach whatever God's put on your heart, whatever you want to do. And he goes, I really, really want to preach Matthew's genealogy. And I thought, what is wrong with you? But I said, that sounds great. And then
he's so supportive.
Yeah, so supportive.
He lies through his teeth, but he's supportive.
It is great. I also wonder what's wrong with you, but it's still great. And then, of course,
that's still an open question.
Yeah, it's the jury's
There's
out.
a number of things.
Be more specific.
Yeah. Right.
But then, he laid it out and explained kind of what he was thinking. I thought, well, this is going to be great. And obviously, if you heard it, you know how it went. And so much cool stuff and so many great things that are pulled out. We could talk about that for a long time, but we're going to try to narrow it down to a few things. So give us a quick rundown and a heads up of kind of how that was, and then we'll dig into some.
So our passage was Matthew 1 through 17. The book of the... I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to read it again.
I'll be back in a little bit. Yeah.
We won't read it again. But here's this genealogy. Matthew starts out the book giving the genealogy of Jesus, lays it all out there. It's kind of like he MacGyvers together a defense of himself as a tax collector and Jesus and Mary and Joseph and even all these Gentiles and prostitutes and sinners and all these people that are following Jesus. Why should you listen to them? And he lays out his argument. Not only is he the son of David, but there's also these 5 women that are in there, 4 from the Old Testament.
There's layers to it.
Yeah.
There's layers to it.
Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba. And as you look at those women that he highlights, you see this distinction between the male foil in the story, who's privileged, he has status. The woman does not, and yet everything gets flipped upside on its head. The woman at the end is the faithful one. The woman at the end is the one that you know their name. The woman at the end is the one that God is pleased with and uses, and it's shocking. And what he's saying there by doing that is to say that Jesus may look like he's a common criminal. I may look like I'm a tax collector that's been stealing from your people, but actually, we're the faithful ones.
Yeah, and if we read it, we have the backstory to some degree. We would read it in context, and we'd go, "Yeah, wow, that's a big deal." Yeah. But to Matthew's readers in that time, it would have been, "What?" And
right.
Really, really flip things upside down.
Yeah.
Quite a stark contrast there. So the title God's Outcasts, and you tagged these women in the genealogy as these outcasts that the world would think, or not even the world, really the Jews would think.
Yeah, those that are on the inside.
They're the insiders, in this case, the Jews, that would think, well, there's not really a place for them. Mm-hmm. They're not the ones that the story's about or for. Mm-hmm. They can tag along maybe. But as you read through that, you realize, what you thought was the outsider is the insider for a reason you completely got wrong. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, that you really hit a lot, which was great, was this idea of God cares not about the outside, but the inside. And we have such a tendency to look at the outside and to worry about the outside and try to make the outside fit this mold and really forsake what matters on the inside. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're visual creatures, we're communal creatures, and so we really, really pay attention to things that we see. Mm-hmm. We're built that way. It's really easy to do. So what do you see? You see the outside. I don't see your heart. I don't see my heart. I don't see everybody else's heart, but it's easy for me to see the way you look, the way you carry yourself, what circles you run in, all these different things, how much money you have, all of that are different ways for us that are available for us to see. And we tend to then make judgments off of where somebody is and how close they are to the Lord based off of what we can see. And then we also run in packs. So as long as I'm like fitting in with this pack,
yeah, that's true,
and with this group, and as long as we're looking like we're obeying God, then I'm in fine and everything's good.
Yeah, we think, well, they're doing this. It's almost the fake it till you make it kind of idea. Without them making it. We're just gonna fake it.
We're just gonna fake it.
Just blend in.
Yeah.
And look like these people. We can be chameleons in that sense, and wherever we go, we get influenced by that. And really, psychiatrists would say, you look at the 5 people you hang out with the most, maybe it's the 10 people you hang out with the most, you're going to look like them.
Yeah.
So be careful who you hang out with, good or bad. And that there's a lot of truth to that, but that doesn't affect the inside the way that it affects the outside. And so we look at it wrong, but the Lord looks at the heart. The Lord looks at the motives, the why, not on what you look like on the outside. And we have a tendency to do that. I don't know how. We don't always do it on purpose. It just sort of happens, or we fall into it, and we have to really check ourselves and see, well, where might I be doing that? If I'm judging somebody based on their appearance when I know nothing of their heart, good or bad, we could say, well, this guy, he's really successful and he's looks sharp and he's articulate. He must really love the Lord. Why did you come to that conclusion?
Why is that?
Any
Why is
more
that the
than
case?
this person's kind of a mess, they must not know the Lord. Why would you think that? John the Baptist was kind of a mess. Kyle Brennan's kind of a mess. You look at these people, it doesn't, but we do that. We still have a tendency to do that. So.
Yeah. And we have a tendency to look at those that have failed and to go, oh, you're on the outside. For sure you're on the outside. And what that does is it completely disregards God's mercy and his forgiveness. And it assumes that person can't have faith and that they can't turn it around. And so you look at somebody like a Rahab in the story, and it's like, oh, she's a prostitute. She's a Gentile prostitute in Jericho. Like, it doesn't get any worse than that. And yet, all of those things did not stop her from being faithful and obedient when the moment came. Which is unbelievable. Which means, if that's the case, if Rahab can be that way, then faith is open to anybody and everybody. Yeah,
that's the next point that we kind of wanted to bring up. I'm glad you brought to that. We also, you talked about the idea that not only is it not the outside that matters, but the inside, but where you start, your status, what family you come from, your name, whatever it is, it's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't, the Lord doesn't go, well, what I really need is somebody who is from this, this culture and this society who is kind of highfalutin, or, I need this guy over here. He can use anyone he wants, however he wants to use them, and it's not about. So talk a little bit more about that. We go through all those women, and you see sort of an echo of that in there.
Yeah. You look at Tamar; she's probably a Gentile. She's probably a Canaanite. She's on the outside. Rahab's definitely a Gentile. Ruth is a Moabite. Bathsheba is at least married to a Hittite. There's a good chance that she's a Gentile as well. Outsiders. All of these are outsiders. And even the whole Old Testament story is about this inside group that then Jesus comes to fulfill for the Jews. But then as soon as he dies and resurrects and sends his spirit into the people, where do they go? They go to all the outsiders. They go to all the Gentiles, me and you and everybody. Like, that's the name of the game, is to go get the outsiders. That's leave the 99 for the one. The whole point is for him to come down to get the outsiders.
Yeah, so think about that in your own life a little bit. I think we've all had the tendency to feel like we're an outsider. Rightly or not.
And if you feel like you've always been an insider, that's probably a red flag.
I was going to say that too. If you're like, well, I know that God loves me because I'm kind of a big deal. Please call me later and we'll talk about that. We'll have a meeting.
We'll tell you that you're not.
Gently talk about that.
Because we already know.
Yeah. But and there's, so pride can come in and go, well, I'm an insider, therefore, whatever. or we go, oh, I'm an outsider, therefore whatever. And it's funny because the enemy really will try to pull us away from the group, and he'll try to discourage us, and it may sound weird to hear this, but even though I'm a pastor, I still often feel like an outsider. Like I'm not really, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. Not because I'm the ultimate insider, but because God has made me part of the family like everyone else. So if we know Jesus, if we trust Jesus, if we put our faith in Jesus, we're an insider. That's it. But I think most of us could probably think of a time, if not now, where we felt like
for sure.
I'm an outsider.
I've definitely felt like an outsider before, and my temptation tends to be more on the insider, though. For me personally, like I tend to feel pride come in and feel like, oh, my parents were believers before I was even born, and I grew up in the church, and I went to seminary, and this and that. And
none of that's true for me.
None of that is true for you.
I'm an outsider because my parents, they didn't.
I was born in
anything.
I was in the church early. I grew up in it, so many different ways. Like the Lord has blessed me being an insider in so many different ways, and there's been a ton of blessing being an insider. There's so many things that I got from that were amazing, but that doesn't make me any more faithful at all. None of those things ensure my faith in this moment. And if I start relying on those things, if I start relying on the education or I went to Sunday school or my parents this or any of those things, I'm in deep trouble.
And
those are hollow.
And it's true. And the counter, by the way, you don't appear to be that way.
Well, that's good.
So that's good.
I'm a liar too.
We don't have to have a meeting. And the flip side of that, being like, well, my struggle has always been that I'm an outsider. My parents didn't raise me in the church, and I didn't know any of it until I was 16. And I read the Bible on my own. Someone gave it to me, and I read it, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And feeling like, well, Kyle, you're not really one of them because you didn't grow up with it, and you didn't learn the Sunday school songs when you were 3. You came to the party late, which is kind of what I always hear. If I lean into that, I can either grow kind of bitter and be like, well, who do these people think they are, or more likely I can go, well, God can't really use me in this, and I'm just in the way, and I'm just nobody, and I'm not actually. It's not humility; it's denying the work of God in His people, and that's a trap. And then I become ineffective in the kingdom, just like the trap that would be set for Nigel would make him ineffective in the kingdom. And so we just go, well, who's made us worthy? Christ and Christ alone. And then we march forward.
The trap on the insider side is like, let's huddle together with those that are like us, and then let's have layers to the church. So there's the real inside group, and then there's people that came later, and we let them in, but they're they're kind of like that. That's horrible.
It's not true, but
that's
awful.
Awful to do that. And what Jesus is gonna, we're coming up on the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus is gonna level the playing field very fast, very quickly. You're all in trouble, and as God wants us to interact with Him, the way that He wants us to interact with Him is understanding our deep need for Him. We have to come to Him in faith, which means we don't have it. We don't have enough. If you are coming to Him in faith, you are saying, I don't have what I need. And instead of relying on myself, I'm crying out for mercy. I'm pleading for God's mercy. And when I do that, I'm doing that properly. And when somebody else who has a different scenario and a different background and all these different things, they have the same opportunity to be just as pleading for mercy as I am.
Yeah, we're all just beggars telling other beggars where to find food. That's all it is. And we're all. There's no difference.
There's nothing else than that. There's nothing else. There's no other game. There's no other way to go. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. It's so true, and we need to be reminded of that. we kind of go, yeah, I get that, but do we get that? Do we live each day like that? We do need to be reminded of that. So super smooth transition. Another thing you talked about, which I have written down right here, was you talked about tulip mania.
Yeah.
Now, I know what tulip mania is, and I know all of these people know what tulip mania is, things that happened in the 1600s in the Netherlands, duh. But in case there's somebody watching who doesn't know,
really good job.
right? Not bad, right?
That's good. That's good.
In case somebody doesn't know what tulip mania is, please explain it to us.
Yeah, so in the 1630s, in the Netherlands, they had been importing tulips, and it became this big, huge phenomena. And then they started messing around with them, coming up with all sorts of different colors, and essentially the price of tulips skyrocketed, just went through the roof high.
Kind of like Beanie Babies.
Yes, it was like that. It was like the dot-com bubble, and like if you look at economic bubbles, it's one of the main ones that they point to. Of it skyrocketed, and then everyone figured out this is ridiculous.
Like through the roof. Like you could buy a house with a tulip.
Like, yeah, you could put a roof over your head because you had a roof inside of the whole house. You could buy a house with that amount of money. That's how expensive it got. And then it just crashed. And so the idea there is all the things that the world cares about are just like tulip mania. Mm-hmm. And the price and the value and all these things that we care about are, we care about wealth, we care about status, we care about influence, we care about
what we look like on the outside.
What we look like on the outside, and all of those things that are, you could pile up all of those things, and the price and the value that we deem them are skyrocketing. And as soon as Jesus comes back, that all plummets to nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
That's good.
All those things that you're holding on to, nothing, no value anymore. And so the whole point there is, don't hold on to tulips, one. Don't get caught holding on and spending all of your time and resources on things that don't matter.
Yeah, and it could be anything in our life that we get skewed off balance a little bit, and we think this is important to God when it's not important to God, or an element of it is important to God, and we just take it way beyond that, and we start focusing around that, and then we cultivate it, and then we talk about it, and then we obsess over it, and then we idolize it, and then we have this tulip that to us and to those around us is worth a house.
It's pretty,
and we go, well, everybody agrees.
Everybody else around is saying that's important.
That this is it. And then we take that thing to the Lord and go, here's my offering to you. Here's my proof of value, or here's what I want to give to you. And he's like, what? That's a tulip. I don't care about that thing. And we get shocked, and then we realize that we've invested all of this into something that God doesn't care about. Yeah. And that's a really good image of all of what Nigel was talking about on Sunday as you go through this, and what we think is valuable and what we think matters is often wrong, and God looks at the heart. Yeah. He doesn't care where you came from. We come to him in faith, and he's the one that does the work. Yeah. So, I love it. That was a great analogy.
One of the things that happens in the Old Testament, they go into captivity and they realize, we messed this up so bad. We got to go back to the law. And so one of the things they start doing is they start the sacrificial system again. And they're all about that. And they're doing all these things. They're sacrificing all these animals. They're like, look, God, look at what we're doing. Meanwhile, there's no justice. They're mistreating the poor and the widows. And they're not taking care of each other. And God comes and he's like, I can't remember which minor prophet it is, but he's like, I don't care. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care how many bulls you sacrifice. It doesn't matter at all, because what I really care about is a heart that loves me. And if you had a heart that loved me, you would also love my other people. So stop giving me. He's like, I wish you would just shut the temple. I wish you would just stop all the sacrifices, because it's offensive to me that you are trying to bring that to me, saying that I care about that. It's essentially going, hey, I just punched your son, but here's a tulip. And he's like, I don't care at all about that. And so then what we're going to be seeing in the Sermon on the Mount is he's going to be talking to the Jewish people. He's going to be talking to the Pharisees. He's going to be saying to them, There's all these things that you care about. There's all these things that you think God is really pleased about. Wow, they're not killing each other. They're not committing adultery. Way to go, guys. And
when actually, yes, you are.
Yeah.
That's
like,
what he's saying.
He's like, we love our neighbors, and God's like, what about your enemies? And they're like, that doesn't count, right? That doesn't count. Yeah. That can't possibly be on there.
Yeah, it's a good setup for the Sermon on the Mount. Is really, black is white, up is down, and everything is wrong. Is kind of how he lays it out.
I'm so excited.
It'll be fun to do.
I'm so excited.
Pray for that as we pull it together, because it's there's just so many things that we can glean from that. So yeah. All right, well, that's good, right? Any other things you want? I don't usually sit on that side and ask him.
That's all I got.
It's much harder than he makes it look. But it was great. It was a great Sunday. If you missed it, go back and listen. It was worth it. I promise it's worth your time. Good stuff. And that's it, right? That's how do we end?
Yeah, just the last thing would be, if you have any of those tulips that you are offering to the Lord, that you're trying to look impressive by being at our church, and you think those things really matter, they really don't. It's time to burn the ships. Burn them. Get rid of them. They're not doing any good for you, and they're getting in the way. And it's time for us to leave that behind and go forward.
Yeah, amen. I like it. It's good. All right, we hope you have a great week. We love you guys. We'll see you soon. I'm starting it, right? Because you're the one that's doing all the talking. You're starting this. I'll start it.
Yeah. You think I'm doing it.
How do you normally start it?
Amazing.
Correctly.
The right way.
The right way. All right, we'll try it.